Okay, now do you see it?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay, we got some controls here. I can make things work. Great. Just a reminder to everybody, your microphones are muted. Please keep them that way to avoid background noise. I'll be monitoring the comments section where if you have questions, please use that chat box to enter your questions. And as I said, I'll be keeping an eye on that. Crystal and I will tag team throughout the presentation today. We are recording this webinar and it'll be posted to our YouTube channel. You see it there later. And then just a reminder to take a look at the upcoming webinars and register for those if you have an interest. So, Crystal, with that, we're just going to launch right in here. And as I said, my friend and colleague Crystal Ball, Executive Director of the Pacific Northwest Utilities Conference Committee, also known as PNUC, and the Northwest Gas Association have been collaborating on an initiative that we call the Gas Electric Coordination Initiative. The purpose of the initiative, very quickly, is to build awareness of the build situational awareness really around the status of our energy delivery capabilities in the region. And this came about, and we'll talk a little bit more about it a little later. Uh, the Many of you will remember the Martin Luther King weekend or the January cold snap in 2024 when, for a variety of different reasons, disruptions in the gas system made very clearly evident the degree to which the grid is leaning on the gas system during those periods of time, and caused a number of executives to get together and talk about how we could work together to coordinate our systems, planning, et cetera, and think about uh, doing what we can do in the region to mitigate the risk of energy disruptions. So, with that, there are a couple of several different um, work streams that we had, but we want to start this off, and I'll let Crystal go through the key messages from our gas electric coordination initiative. Crystal, take it away.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate everybody's attention to this and joining us for the webinar. And as Dan mentioned, I'm the executive director of a trade association for electric utilities. And so I'm on the electric side while Dan's on the natural gas side. Dan also mentioned that after this January 2024 event, we started working together at the request of our shared member on an initiative to enhance coordination between these two sectors that are growing more interdependent on each other than they ever have been in our region. And what that event demonstrated is that the region is dangerously close to an energy supply shortfall. And we got a group together from these two sectors, electricity and the natural gas, and we worked on some key messages that we all agreed were important to communicate in our region about what happened and why we need to coordinate more carefully together. That's where these key messages come from. Again, that gas and electric interdependency, this event that demonstrated how close the region is to an energy supply shortfall. Um, there are a number of reasons for that, and one is that demand for energy in the Pacific Northwest is projected to increase significantly. So what we do at PNUC is we put together a regional energy picture of the Northwest power system. And we do that with our with all the utilities in the Pacific Northwest, and they respond to a request for information from us. And we put all that information together, and each year we update what's called the Northwest Regional Forecast. And what we have seen over the last 3 years is utilities are planning for an unprecedented demand for increase in electricity over the next 10 years. Number of drivers for that increasing demand, something that has become, I think, much more uh, or that people have become much more aware of in our region, but across the nation. The demand for electricity from our reliance on digital technologies, so cloud computing, and now with artificial intelligence. That's a huge demand for electricity that is growing at an unprecedented amount. But we also have policies in Oregon and Washington that require electrification. And so we are seeing utilities plan for that electrification of transportation and heating uses in our region. And we also have evidence of demand from onshoring of manufacturing. There's a lot of things going on that are increasing the demand, but it is happening at an projected to happen at an unprecedented level in just the next 10 years. Also in our Northwest Regional Forecast, we see utilities planning on an unprecedented number of additional resources to meet this demand. And we are communicating here that those resources are at risk of being deployed. They are not getting connected to the system. They are not being developed. And so we wanted to highlight that risk of those resources not being connected to our system that increases reliability challenges. And so again, Dan and I have been working together really to pull two sectors that don't normally coordinate, and we recognize that to assure a reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy system here in the Northwest, we need to plan very carefully together. So those are our key messages and a little bit about the work that PNUC does. But it was a big part of this initiative is coming together and developing these messages that we could share consistently across our region. Dan, anything to add?
Crystal, just a question. When you talk about the capacity additions that may not be deployed, can you just give a little more color around what we've seen in the region compared maybe to other regions regarding capacity additions and why we think that there may be a risk of those resources not being added?
Thanks, Dan, for the opportunity to just share a little bit more about what we have highlighted in the Northwest Regional Forecast. We do see progress in our region of adding additional resources. We have looked back at from 2020 to the last year. So we see utilities adding resources. They have been primarily wind and solar, and we are starting to see battery storage in that resource. But when we compare what utilities are forecasting to what utilities are actually able to acquire, especially for this past year, we see um, uh, that utilities are falling short of what they had forecasted. Does that help provide that context, Dan, that you were looking for?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Crystal. So I'm going to take a minute here to just talk. Crystal and I will again continue to go back and forth, but we'll talk a little bit about this from the gas system perspective. So these pie charts that you see in front of you are relative in size. So in 1999, well, in 2024, the gas system delivered 30% more throughput than it did in 1999. In 1999, 50% of that demand was serving industrial demand, which is not weather dependent. In 2024, 75, more than 75% of that load was weather dependent load, including more than a third of it to fuel generation of electricity in the region. The point of this slide is the system is now the competition for molecules during severe weather is intensifying. This is a clear picture that the generation system in the region is leaning heavily on the gas system during weather events, and that's creating more competition for those molecules during severe weather. So that's the main point of this slide. And again, if people have questions, please enter them into the chat. I will try to monitor that as best I can as we're going through a few slides. And this slide just demonstrates again the growth in demand for natural gas as a fuel to generate electricity in our region. Again, our region is Idaho, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia. British Columbia isn't adding much gas demand to generate electricity, but some, maybe surprisingly to some. You may ask yourself why the dip in 2011, 2012? It was pretty well straight up. Those were very windy and watery years, so lots of wind, lots of water in the system, and gas is the generating fuel on the margin. First one off, last one on, when the other, depending on the other resources, which are hydro, of course, coal at the time, though we're retiring more and more of that, nuclear, and then of course wind and solar. So, but you can see what's happening, especially the last 5 years or so, with the increasing throughput. These are annual numbers, increasing throughput of gas to generate electricity in our region. Upward slope. Crystal?
Yeah, Dan, if you could go back to your slide first,
Yeah.
because I think this is a good segue. I don't think I heard you talk about 2011 and 2012.
Go ahead. I mentioned it briefly, but yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Sorry, I missed it, Dan. It's a good segue into what we're going to show. The region is very blessed with an abundant hydropower resource, and sometimes that resource shows up in greater amounts than it does in other years. And so this is a really good chart of in 2011 and 2012 when we had really good water years. And so the region relied on that hydropower instead of as much of the electricity produced by natural gas. So just want to highlight that, and then we'll go to the next slide. Thanks, Dan.
You bet.
This is our picture of both the nameplate capacity of existing Northwest utility generating resources projected in 2026. And these pictures do not include any planned future resources. This is really what utilities are planning for in the near term. And you can see two pictures here. Again, that nameplate capacity resource, so what those machines are built for. That's how we get to 55,000 megawatts. But we also like to provide the picture of the annual generation. So this is what those machines produce. And we see hydro making up more than half of the pie, both on nameplate capacity and on annual generation. But we do point out here that natural gas is the second largest source of power in our region. So a lot of people here in the Pacific Northwest know how much the Northwest relies on that hydropower system. We rely on natural gas to power electricity plants as well. This picture is changing, and that's the value of the Northwest Regional Forecast. So we can see how it has changed. Dan mentioned the decrease in generation produced by coal-powered powered uh, plants. And we see more electricity generation being produced by those variable resources, wind and solar. And then for that battery now starting to show up, I think this is the second year where we've seen that battery showing up in this pie. Again, that is what utilities are counting on here in the Northwest. These are Northwest utility generating resources for the coming year, and primarily hydro. But that second amount is, or that second largest slice of the pie is electricity produced by the natural gas.
Thanks, Crystal. Just had a note from Matthew Klippenstein asking if we'd find a resource useful, which yes, Matthew, we would. Please send it my way. And folks think that might be useful, take a look at the chat and feel free to text me or email me afterwards, and happy to share that report that Matthew sends my way. So moving on then, again, what we're talking about here really is how heavily the grid relies on the natural gas system to produce the electrons that are demanded, especially during severe weather. And one point I want to make here is that the gas system operates very, very reliably, typically 5 nines, right? And we don't see disruptions very often, but we are running out of room in the existing pipeline capacity. And this chart demonstrates that. It basically, the punchline of this chart is during the winter months, on average, we are using the pipeline capacity in the region at 95% of its capacity on average during those 3 winter months of December, January, and February. So there's no room for new loads or additional loads. We've managed through several, incidents where we've seen on the Northwest Pipeline system, for instance, historic throughputs over the last few years. So we're using the system very heavily during the winter months, and that's an important point for us to make. And then that leads to what happens when something does go wrong, does go bump in the night, right? And we talked about this is the MLK weekend or the cold snap of January 2024. I use those two terms because in Canada, it's called the January cold snap of 2024. Down here, we refer to it as the Martin Luther King weekend cold snap. So I just try to respect our Canadian friends and use language that they get to. So on that Friday, heading into that weekend, the upstream pipes in British Columbia and Alberta just had a bump. They lost some compression, and that created some issues downstream. Avista and Northwest Pipeline had to work really hard to make sure that they could preserve the pilot lights in Kellogg. So it came down to and what Avista did was made a decision not to turn on its thermal generating units, but to go to the market for that power in order to save the several thousand pilot lights in Kellogg, Idaho, because as pressures were dropping, they couldn't comfortably do both. And so that was one issue that occurred and had implications for the grid, right? For the electric system that leans heavily on this gas system, a disruption in the gas system, which was temporary and resolved fairly quickly, but did cause an issue on the grid. And then if you go fast forward to the very next day, I think all of you on the call are probably familiar with Jackson Prairie. And this is Saturday, about noon on Saturday. Nominations out of Jackson Prairie were over 1 billion cubic feet a day. And due to a communications outage between the control system and the compressors themselves, Jackson Prairie went all the way down to zero. And So that was obviously concerning. The physical withdrawals at that point in time were just under a billion cubic feet, and went to zero. And that created, again, some issues as folks got on the line to try to figure out how to solve this math problem. We need to be delivering about a billion cubic feet a day, and we don't have that much. And the only way you solve this math, there's two ways to solve the math problem. You either you cut demand, shed load, or you bring additional supplies in from somewhere else. And so there is I think most of you are familiar with the Northwest Mutual Assistance Agreement. It's a agreement in place to help manage situations when they arise like this, and trying to figure out how do we bring additional supply on or take additional loads off the system, to make sure that we don't run into dangerous pressure levels on that system. Fortunately, this one also was resolved pretty quickly. The Puget Sound Energy is the operator at Jackson Prairie, and they sent some folks out and opened up valves from the reservoirs. So free flowing, that's called, without compression. There was enough pressure in the storage reservoir itself to get onto the pipes, and that solved about half of the problem right there. But once again, it became evident that the grid, generators in the region are relying on the gas system during these events, or relying on the gas system anyway, but during these events in particular. And there were, uh, I would say, grid operators had to scramble a bit to make up for what had to come off the system. Everything managed. We got through both of these outages. It's important to emphasize that we managed through, but it wasn't a comfortable experience, shall we say. We got very close, right, to really having some issues. So we hit the free flow. If you're looking at this chart, you see around 5:30. This is actually in Central Time, so you see around 7:30 that Jackson Prairie went down again. That's because they had to formally shut it down to restart everything to bring it all back up again. So that was a planned one, and there was enough line pack to handle that little brief incident that was outside of the peak time anyway. So bottom line of this was the MLK weekend, the January 2024 cold snap that really threw into stark relief how interdependent these two systems are, and caused our common members to come together and say, let's do better. And let's think about the things that we can control in our region to mitigate risks to energy reliability. This last slide
Hey,
for me.
Dan,
Go ahead,
uh,
Crystal.
yeah, before you cover this one, um, I'm just going to emphasize what I think I heard you say during those 2 days. Took immense coordination in an emergency situation, and utilities were forced to make very difficult decisions, again, in an emergency kind of period. And this region imported a lot of electricity from outside the region in order to um, maintain reliability. So simply to keep lights on and to keep homes heated during that prolonged or multi-day cold snap. I just wanted to emphasize those two things, Dan, about the immense or the intense coordination during that emergency situation and the choices that utilities had to make. And we relied on imports to keep lights on and homes heated.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that emphasis. It's critically important that that's a message that gets across. So I did have a question on this slide. The question came from was how does the pipeline deliver 118% of its physical capacity? It's always a good question. I usually reference it when I have that slide up. So thanks, Kevin, for raising it. The fact is, in cold weather, the pipeline systems operate much more efficiently, which allow them to deliver more molecules within standard operating pressures. And so while it may be rated on average at a certain SAOP, and there's more molecules that can be delivered, so more energy can actually be delivered during those periods of time. The short answer is equipment operates more efficiently in cold weather. And yeah, so I'll leave that at that. This last slide is just demonstrates again, not just the importance of the gas system in delivering fuel to generate electricity in the region, but also how much energy it's actually delivering during cold weather events. So during this is 1 hour during that weekend, the proportions would remain roughly the same for an entire day during a cold weather snap. 70% of the energy consumed in Oregon and Washington was delivered by the gas system, 30% by the grid. And the gas system also delivered, in addition to that direct use energy, another tranche of gas to fuel electricity. So just another real message about how important the gas system is, especially during cold weather. The gas system delivers heat, and it delivers fuel to generate electricity. And this is just another way of emphasizing that increasingly we're seeing greater interdependence between those two systems, and also a little more competition for the molecule during those severe weather events. So, Crystal, you want to take this piece?
Yeah, and Dan said it and really created some context for our presentation today. We were asked to work on an initiative together, and we brought industry leaders together at a meeting in May of 2024 to share experience and to think about actions that industry here in this region could take, the actions that are within um, the industry leaders' control. And so we identified 4 actions at that meeting. And Dan and I have been working together to make sure that we were able to um, work on those actions and share our learnings and work. So industry leaders identified this opportunity to uh, be better prepared next time. And so we are calling that winter readiness. And we brought operators of these systems together in advance of winter 2024-25. And we again made those connections, tried to build those relationships and communication outside of an emergency situation. So really that the operators knew who to talk to and could plan appropriately for different scenarios. We're doing that again this fall in October. We'll bring operators of these systems together. So that's our winter readiness effort. We also thought it would be good to hire an independent consultant to review regional reports, so adequacy assessments, but also retrospectives on that January 2024 event. So we, working together, Guidehouse did a review of regional reports, and they identified some gaps that we have in planning, and they made recommendations. And so that Guidehouse review and recommendations is really a good foundation for what we are trying to do going forward. Um, the third thing is we worked on common messages, and Dan and I have shared those common messages with you here today. But we also identified a need to build awareness. And so our 4th action really is that symposium that we'll talk about later. But I want to take you back to this slide, lots of words on here, but this is very much focused on enhancing integrated planning and coordination between the gas and electric sectors. And so we're trying to identify maybe what the next steps might be and to really focus in on these recommendations that we got from Guidehouse, our independent consultant, and work towards a enhancing communication and coordinated planning. So again, really that Guidehouse report identified some gaps that we had recognized, especially as a result of this event, and made some recommendations for how we might continue to work together to increase coordination. Dan, anything you want to say about Guidehouse?
No, I think you covered it. And then, so the last thing here is this symposium that is coming up here on October 9th. And I will say that I'll turn it over to Crystal to talk about kind of the objectives and the plan here, but our target audience here is policymakers, legislators, really, regulators, agency folks, others who have an impact on how we operate in the region. And again, it's about building awareness of where we are and some of the uh, opportunities and challenges that we are seeing as operators of the energy delivery system in the region. So, Crystal, you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how Dan and I are working through our associations to bring people together, but want to point out here that we have additional partners in this journey. The Western Power Pool, which operates the Western Resource Adequacy Program, is a partner in this symposium. And then the Public Generating Pool, which is a group of consumer-owned utilities that own generation. They are also partners in this. So sorry.
Bless
Uh,
you.
I think I did bring some water. We've been talking a lot. Dan and I, I wonder, anyways, maybe Dan doesn't. Like, how long can we speak about this? We have a lot of information to share, so appreciate your attention.
Yeah.
But I was saying we have additional partners who are co-hosting the symposium with us, the outcome that we hope to get from putting the symposium together, bringing different perspectives um, to share at this symposium, and hoping that we have a good turnout of policymakers so that they can be better educated. So a good outcome of the symposium would be what I call the building awareness phase of this work. It's a symposium really for education. But a second great outcome from the symposium would be to identify some next steps that we could take that really help us do a couple things. Generate support for investing in the energy infrastructure that we need in this region. Um, but it's also hopefully getting policymakers and stakeholders, others to approach these reliability challenges with an open mind. So we've got a great list of cohesive topics for our symposium, and we really do hope that it builds awareness for these reliability risks and planning challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. That's if any of you have questions, please do feel free to use the chat. Or actually, at this stage of the game, I'd encourage you to go ahead and if you have a question, raise your hand, and uh, we could bring you off mute to ask the question. But that's the presentation and the kind of the overview of the work that we've been engaged in for the last more year and a half. And I just want to add one last thing. Crystal said it. I'll say it again. The symposium is not the culmination of our work. It's really the first step of the next stage, which is action. You know, we're hoping to identify actions that come out of that. So, any questions for Crystal or I? I'm seeing hands clapping, but no questions yet, Crystal.
Nice to get that positive feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Scott Johnson from Northwest Natural. All right. Well, Crystal, I want to thank you for joining me on this webinar. It's a little unusual for me. I usually moderate them. I'm not usually the
Speaker.
presenter. So I was a little sorry about a little bit of an awkward start, but we got it. We got through it. I want to thank everybody for joining us and encourage you to join us for our next webinar in October, where we will our guest will be the Northwest Coalition for Energy Choice, which is an independent grassroots advocacy organization advocating for energy choice in the region. And we look forward to hearing from them on the work that they're doing. With that, I will say thank you again, Crystal, for your time today. And thank you all for your attention. And we look forward to seeing you at next month's October version of our monthly webinar series. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Crystal.